Hello, everyone, and welcome to part one of our three-part TechBytes series, Mobility in the Age of Big Data, Analytics, Data, and Devices, presented by Slashdot and sponsored by Panasonic. I'm Michael Krieger, and in this year's State of the CIO survey, IDG found that data analytics is the #1 investment priority this coming year. Access to data is one of the key benefits for mobile workers who can use it to both drive their own productivity and enhance the customer experience. Whether that data is from corporate sources or the edge via IoT, mobile workers are interacting with data that helps them work smarter and more efficiently. Today, in part one, data analytics and the mobile user, we're going to talk about what this means in an increasingly mobile workforce. And here to help me is Jim Dempsey, National Sales Manager from Panasonic. Jim, thanks for joining me.
Glad to be here.
So, Jim, there are a lot of moving parts in analytics today. Let's talk about the intersection between data analytics and the mobile user, including the Internet of Things. So what should our viewers know?
Yeah, it's an increasingly interesting topic, and as we're talking to our customers across many industries, not just any single one, they're all trying to unlock the power of the data. And really, from our perspective, Panasonic, what we represent is the edge of the network, and really at the point of activity where the workers are using, accessing, creating, manipulating and sharing that data throughout the enterprise. And certainly the other layer to that, you look at the machine-to-machine technology that's now coming online as well. So a lot of interest in our customers on how they can better use that data for a number of different things. And really the two kind of, if you call it, two main categories they look at are one, business operations, right? So how can I be more efficient? How can I turn my activity into cash quicker? Again, reduce costs by maybe dynamic routing and inventory management as well. But then on the other side, they're all very interested in the customer experience. So how can we make the customer experience better, by leveraging a lot of this data? So there's an opportunity on kind of both sides of the fence, both the external customer-facing side and then more the internal side that we talk about with customers. But really the one big help, I think, and the one reason we're seeing a big interest in this right now is the networks have gotten really good, right? We're now on 4G, 5G's coming, so a lot of very rich content can be shared, collected, and moved, across and around an enterprise today. So I think that in itself is providing the opportunity. So really, what we see in many cases with our customers is they're now in the stage of, okay, I've got some systems in place, I'm starting to collect some data. Now what do I do with it? And most of them will look at it retroactively. They'll look at what happened last month to plan for what's going on, in the future. As they move up that curve, they start to work with systems that become a little more dynamic or almost self-aware, in that they can do some basic programming. Say, if you receive an input from doing X, then do Y automatically. Notify this person or that person. So they become a much more proactive way of running their business. And one of the analogies, I heard the other day was, it's kind of driving on the Autobahn in your Porsche, right? And you're using a rear view mirror to navigate forward. Probably not the best way to go about it. But in a perfect world, you'd want to have that data that's showing you where you're going to and what's out in front of you, and then dynamically routing you as it need be. So really, that's when we look at the intersection of the mobile worker and where the data is. Obviously, the data is most useful at the edges, right, for what's going on at the customer and the point of activity. But then being able to take it back into a data warehouse of some sort, and then being able to have that help manage business operations and kind of provide the linkage between the external and the internal is something a lot of customers are looking at right now, and they're really trying to figure out what does it mean for their company, what does it mean for their customers, and how best to implement it.
So I guess you're right. What is it? They say hindsight is always 20/20, right?
That's right.
So how are businesses gathering and using this data captured on the front lines to get business insights?
Yeah, so one of I'll just use an example in a field service environment where you may have a very large field service force, and obviously the dispatchers taking calls from customers, and so the daily routes are being planned by the system. So a lot of moving parts there. First off, you have the customer experience, right? You don't want to disappoint the customer. If you say you're going to be there, companies that used to say we'll be there between 8 and 5, that's not accepted anymore. That's basically to take the day off from work to sit home and wait for your washer repair guy to show up. But in today's world, now in many cases they're down to a 3-hour window, and in other cases an hour window. But those types of capabilities on the customer side are being driven by the fact that the presence of where and locations of where their service assets are, being the repair people, as well as inventory, knowing that if I have a schedule for the day, if I'm a tech for a particular company, when I log in the morning, I get my work schedule. It's already figured out the best way to route me based on the calls, priorities as well. You might have a good customer you want to get to first versus maybe another customer, and you can make those decisions. Also, the system can determine that I have the right parts on my rig, if you will, or in my van to go and accomplish the work that I'm going to have to do that day. So a lot of the data in a field service environment is being used to route appropriately and make sure that the right inventory is with the right tech. And if a disruption happens, that disruption can then have I talked a little bit before about how it becomes almost autonomous, where I get delayed at a route and one of my counterparts gets automatically rerouted to take my third call because I'm stuck on my second call. And then that person gets backfilled by someone else in the organization. Again, making sure that tech that they're backfilling for me has the appropriate skill set as well as parts, to execute that. So that's just an example in a field service environment of how, by having that data real time and accessible to everybody, when a change happens on the left, it ripples through, and then the appropriate actions on the right happen to make sure that the customer's taken care of. But then all the business operations things that have to happen internally happen the way they need to.
So let's talk about some of the ways analytics are changing. They're increasingly shifting from, prescriptive, talking about, looking at what happened, to predictive, right? So how can this better be used to manage mobile workers and the business overall?
Yeah, no, that's again, like I mentioned, you're starting to get into this mode where when you fully implement, a full data analytics platform with predictive, that's where everyone wants to get to. That's the kind of the nirvana. You look at, I think, one of the most recent TV commercials that IBM has going with Watson and the repair guys there for the elevator, and the security guard's looking at him saying, "Well, why are you here?" It's like, "Well, the guy called me," and he points to the computer, but the elevator isn't broken yet, but it will soon be. So we're going to go ahead and do some preventive on that. So that's where everyone wants to get to, and a lot of that also plays into the machine to machine play, right? Because if you have these assets like that elevator as an example, it's not a mobile worker, it's an asset, right? But it's smart and it's got a sensor that's sending some data back. But there's an intersection between that, and it's great that it does that. But if you don't have the mobile worker that can then respond to that and be out at that point of activity where that repair needs to happen or that work needs to happen, then it doesn't matter. You can have all the analytics in the world if you don't have the mobile worker that's equipped with the right information, the right tools to get the job done when they get there. And in many cases, you're seeing a lot of newer technologies coming in, and again, because of the network, which I mentioned, richer content, the remote expert, setting up a session like we're doing right now to have maybe a senior tech back at the office walking a junior tech through a repair on a piece of gear that they may not be familiar with. There's also voice, and there's also augmented reality that we're seeing right now is starting to roll out, where as a worker's out at the edge, the machine's made a call because something's going to be happening. They go out to respond to that, and then using the augmented reality can actually step them through, start peel back the onion, so to speak, open this panel, pull this breaker out, hit that switch. So again, there's an intersection there that has to happen. You have to have the workers and the right tools in their hands to access this information and use it in an appropriate format, and then you have to marry that to the back end analytics that's able to drive that connection between the two.
So let's talk about the Internet of Things a bit, or Internet of Everything, whatever we call it today. How are devices capturing all this data, and how does IoT data change the way mobile workers do their jobs?
Yeah, so it's just kind of funny the word IoT, Internet of Everything, Internet of Things, fog computing. I think there's just consultants out there that they make a living writing books with all these new acronyms. But whatever you want to call it, right? It's basically smart edge technology and a data network. And a lot of the work that's going on. We talked a little bit about the augmented reality. That's one way a user will consume data, if you will, or access data in a visual format. But there's many other technologies that they use to even just plain old keypad input, right? So I'm typing in on a screen, entering data, I'm receiving data back, that way, kind of a two-way communication. I'll be entering data through voice. So certainly with Google Voice, Siri, those types, Cortana, those types of technologies. It's a voice dictation type of setup where notes and things could be sent back and forth. We talked about the Skype, the remote access type session with remote expert session, where the video is being used either live or canned video replaying back, say, a repair procedure. You look at the barcode scanning technologies, right? So if there's assets with barcodes on them, that asset can be scanned, and then so that the user doesn't have to type in the long string of barcode, and then that asset information is returned back to the user, giving them the history, and they can start working on it. And then another way we're seeing this data capture happening is through RFID. So RFID assets with RFID tags that either could be passive or active, depending on the use case and the need, can store data for assets and act as call it enhanced barcode, a barcode that can have more data that can be written to and read from. So there's a multitude of ways in which companies can look at the data capture side, and it really is one of those one size doesn't fit all. We talked to a lot of different industries, and even within, say, a field service industry, field services could be, that's kind of a broad. You can have the elevator repair people, you could have pest control, which falls under, call it the field service, the HVAC repair people. So there's unique attributes to each of those sub industries that lend itself better or more to one technology than another. So the platforms which are being deployed, particularly from an enterprise class, when you're talking about the consumer world and a lot of the technologies that people try to deploy, they're not built with these concerns in mind. They're just basically like our iPhone or Android phone that we use as a personal device. When you get into the enterprise class type systems, they're looking at the need to have devices that have dedicated barcodes. Now, I can scan a barcode with my camera, but if you've ever done that, it's not very quick. So if I'm only scanning one barcode a day, then maybe that works for me. But if I'm scanning several hundred barcodes a day, that becomes a real drag on productivity because it takes me far longer to scan each barcode. So, again, we have these conversations with our customers who certainly they're enamored with, I think, price points and the cool factor of consumer technology, but they have to balance that with the fact that those consumer technologies don't necessarily have the data capture functionality that they may need for their job and for their business. But also, there's other concerns which come into play when you start looking at integrating those technologies, those devices, into the networks, security, privacy, payment technologies, things like that. That again, consumer technologies don't necessarily address. So those are some conversations that we have with our customers in this space about how to choose the right device, but also to look at the different types of data capture technologies that fit best for their use case.
Makes perfect sense to me. So we're talking a lot about, these edge devices, but let's focus on mobility because, that's really the point of it, right? So what's the special role that mobile devices play in serving new customers?
Yeah. So again, in a lot of the conversations we have with our partners and customers, we span a lot of different verticals. So there's some uniqueness, some truisms across the board, and there's other things that are a little more specific. But one of the trends that we're seeing right now is there used to be kind of a one size fits all from an IT perspective. Everybody gets a laptop, or everybody gets a tablet, or everybody gets a handheld. And what we're seeing right now is more of a purpose built. So let's look at the job function that worker is doing, whether it be out in front of the customer, in the back office or in the manufacturing plant or somewhere behind the scenes, and making sure that individual has the right tool for the job, right? And that goes across, whether it's a handheld is the best option for them, whether it's a tablet or even the 2-in-1s, which are a newer form factor that everyone's seen kind of come on lately. So there's considerations along those, and a lot of the influence that we're seeing there is also, it's a unique one that's coming from a demographic change with the workforce. That the workforce is obviously becoming younger, as the baby boomers are moving out, much more versed in technology, much more comfortable with touchscreens. They don't want keys. In the old days, we had clipboards and pens, right? Then we went to the laptops with the keyboards, and then even smaller devices with actual tactile keyboard, like a BlackBerry keyboard. Today's users, the newer users, they're perfectly comfortable with a fully touchscreen enabled device. They don't necessarily want, and actually, if you give them something with a keyboard on it, they're looking like it's, hey, that was 10 years ago. What are you giving me this old technology for? So, but there's a balance customers have to look at because they've got a wide range of demographics in their workforce. So how do they blend the right technologies to make sure that the users are actually going to use the technology when they get it. But the technology also becomes a recruiting and retention tool. So as a company, I need to recruit people. So if I have this newer platform, this new type of technology that makes these new employees feel like they're joining a company that's with it, they care about us, they're giving us the appropriate tools, but also for, say, the more senior workers, that they're still being provided what they need to do their job. And then from a customer perspective, for the people that are in front of the customers, that presents an image. So if I'm showing up at a customer site with new technology as opposed to very old technology, it creates a perception and an image to the customer. So a lot of moving parts there that customers are looking at, but it's certainly an interesting point in time right now as these technologies are coming online. The internet, like we talked about, is the Internet of Things is really kicking in here, and how that M2M IoT play, kind of encompasses all the businesses, from the outside to the inside.
So I got time for just one more question, just a couple minutes left. Let's talk about IT and their role. What is IT's role in ensuring that mobile workers can access and use this data that they need?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because the model in the past, the kind of the traditional model has been IT set standards, right? They go out, they look at the technologies, they set up the systems, and when you start as an employee, you're handed a laptop, and it's got all kinds of corporate information on all your passwords and how you get into your system. And so that was pretty much an IT-driven model, and it still is to a degree today. But with that pressure I mentioned about the demographics, now IT is being pushed, technology is being pushed towards the IT department from the business units and from the workers, particularly these newer workers that are saying, let's take advantage of this new technology. And IT's job, I think, has got exponentially harder, because now not only do they have to address everything that they had to in the past, now they're having to evaluate, look at new operating systems, new form factors, and maybe a multitude of operating systems and form factors within their own environment. And certainly in different types of industries, you look in a healthcare industry, you have HIPAA laws, and in retail, you have PCI payment requirements. Then you have government and military and even public safety requirements for how data is handled and managed. So there's a lot on the plate for IT people today, and it's the key that we talk about with our partners, our customers, is, if you're going to invest in these technologies, make sure it's something that can span not only the new technology, but the old technology. So in our case, the platforms that we look at when we design our products, we kind of future-proof them. We allow customers to bridge the gap, because we know that it's not going to be a cutover. Friday we're using the old technology and Monday we're using the new technology. It's going to be a migration. So that's something that we look at to make sure that we can span both. And then also, when we do that, we look at how does the corporate requirements on the back end, all the security and data requirements and networking requirements that our customers are going to ask for, are the platforms that they're going to be putting at the edge with their workers capable of appropriately integrating into their network, accessing the network securely, protecting the data, but still allowing that worker to do everything that they need to do to accomplish their job. So yeah, IT's got their level of difficulty is certainly going up as more and more of these technologies are coming out there.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jim. That's really all the time we have. I want to thank everyone for watching. In our additional resources section, you'll find links to parts 2 and 3 of this series on deploying rugged devices to ensure a reliable experience for the mobile worker and managing enterprise mobility, in-house versus managed service. You'll also find some other documents, including 6 ways data is taking over retail, 4 steps to becoming a data-driven field service operation, and 8 industries where IoT is working the best. Thanks again to Panasonic for making this TechBytes series possible. For Slashdot Media, this is Michael Krieger saying thanks for joining us.